Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Tuesday morning with 9 minutes past the top of the hour of 9 a.m. that we do come to you live to discuss yet again the latest from the world of sport, uh, from the world of football. There's plenty for us to discuss, including former Aston Villa manager Martin O'Neill ripping into Arne Slot, and and you know, so and more of that. So we will talk about Atletico Madrid's grievances, about the lack of hot water at the Emirates, So we will be talking about that and more this morning. And of course, the UEFA Champions League. So do indulge me, do join me on this path, on this journey, as we discuss the latest from the world of football. Otherwise, I hope you're doing well. I thank you so much to all those that managed to catch last night's podcast. We are a little bit late, but you managed to catch it still. Then also, to all our new subscribers, I say welcome to the community. It's a pleasure to have you around. So, yeah, I hope you, and then to all our new subscribers, good to have you join us. I hope you do enjoy your stay with us. I hope you get to love what we do, fall in love with what we do, and then be with us every single day. Every single day at 9 a.m. For our morning broadcasts, and every single night at 11 p.m. for our evening/night broadcasts. Then also, anyways, allow me to have our audience tested before we even proceed any further, because those will be forming the gist of our conversation tonight. Sorry, not tonight, but this beautiful morning, unless otherwise that somebody brings up something that helps to expound on our topic this morning. But where do we start it all? Let's start with we will start with the former Aston Villa manager, that's Martin O'Neill, who has ripped into Arne Slot and drawn comparisons to him and former Arsenal manager, former Arsenal manager Arsene Charles Wenger, saying that he is behaving like Arsene Wenger, like that every time Arsenal lost a game, he would mourn about how defensively teams played. And he did say he was very, very disappointed with he was very, very disappointed with Arne Slot's comments in the aftermath of the game. I did tell you that was on Sunday night. Yes, in the aftermath of Manchester United beating up against Liverpool by 2-1 at Anfield, their first victory since 2016 and Liverpool's fourth consecutive victory. And and Liverpool's fourth consecutive defeat. So in the aftermath of that game, Arne Slot did say that Manchester United play with low block, they played long balls and everything in that regard. So now Martin O'Neill came out to say he is disappointed in Arne Slot. I did compare him to Arsene Charles Wenger, the former Arsenal manager who was at the club for 22 years or so. And he said that he was disappointed that he looked at the game that way, because it's not the role of the opposing team or the opponents to give you a winnable game. It's their role to make it as difficult as possible for you to win it. It's them to choose whatever tactics to deploy, and it is your role as a manager to deploy whatever tactics that can counter the very tactics that the other opponents have, put up. So in that sense, he thinks that he says he may as well could have walked into the dressing room for Manchester United on the day and told Ruben Amorim not to play, with a low block, not to play long balls, in that sort of sense. And again, I remember he also made similar comments in the aftermath of their 3-2 victory against Newcastle. of how Newcastle played long balls, how they played with the low block, how they looked to have, to do set pieces all the time, which was no crime, must I admit. But because Liverpool had won that particular game by 3 goals to 2, for those of you that care to remember, Ariel Ngomoha scoring the late winner, I think the comments went by us really, or the comments weren't discussed any further beyond that because they had won. Because at the end of the day, they had found a way, to win. And I do think that if the result from Sunday night had been different from what it was, perhaps the comments would have been different. And maybe perhaps he would have made the same, assessment of the game. But if the result had been different, we wouldn't be berating him. We wouldn't be suddenly scolding him, or we wouldn't be even discussing his comments in that realm. But yeah, again, time and again has proved to us that in every league you will find those kinds of teams that are going to play in that sort of form. And you cannot really critique them for playing in the way they are. But this is very, very common with Premier League teams, especially when they are facing bigger teams, mid-table teams, lower table teams, when they are facing the big boys, especially teams that they know can possess the ball and use it well. When you're facing Liverpool, who are very, very good on the counter, they are very quick in their transitions. When you're playing Manchester City, who you know are going to dominate you in terms of possession, they have all the good players. When you're playing a team like Arsenal, you cannot, go to them and try to play like them, or try to play, that sort of possession-based football, because they will rip you to shreds in that sort of sense. So when teams come to play those opponents, those kinds of opponents, they come well knowing that that is that if they do play the way those big teams would have loved them to play, then suddenly it's going to be a long day for them in office. So usually teams want to deploy that sort of mid block, a low block. Crystal Palace deploy it, Newcastle deploy it, Nottingham Forest have deployed it before. Forget the short stint of Ange Postecoglou that lasted 39 days. Everton have deployed it under Sean Dyche. They've deployed it under, David Moyes. So in that sort of sense, you have those teams. Fielding or playing in that sort of style. They'll play with the mid block. They will play with the low block. Look to catch you at the counter attack. They will want to capitalize on every little, set piece play that they may get, and things like that. So it's only understandable that they tackle every opponent in the best way they know how, in the best way that they think I will get them perhaps a desired result, whether it's a draw, whether it's a victory. At the end of the day, they just do not want to lose, And you know what it means for a team's confidence if they can go up and beat up against a big team or a top team, You know what that means. So in this particular case, given all the stick that we've been given to Manchester United in recent times, for Ruben Amorim's rigidity, for his lack of, flexibility, and things like that, it was only going to be fair that he deployed whatever measures, whatever tactics to try and win the game. And those tactics really, really worked, because the way they did it and the way they've done it multiple times is that they play their ball into a goalkeeper or one of the center backs who they want to go long, and that ball is intended to have a target man who is going to be Matthias Cunha, like it was over the weekend, or Benjamin Sesko. Now whoever that player is supposed to receive that ball and then head it backwards into this sort of middle third area of the pitch, or back into midfield, depending on how long the kick had been. Or they also bench on the fact that the opponent will win that long ball, but in winning it, they're not going to control it to their feet, but they're going to head it back. So how they set up was they pushed a little bit higher up with their back three. They had their wing backs spread out really, really wide to literally caressing the touchline. Then they sort of congested that midfield in a narrow manner. you had Casemiro, you had Bruno Fernandes, you had Mason Mount, Brani Bomo, and Matthias Cunha are forming some form of rectangle between the four players in Bruno Fernandes, Casemiro, Mason Mount, and Mbeumo with a nose pick or a corn pick of Matthias Cunha pulling through as the target man. So and you can see particularly where the resultant goal comes from in the first 2 minutes of the game, that Virgil van Dijk is attracted to come so high up the pitch. He wins the header, but in the process harms his own player in Alexis McAllister, which goes into a head injury that the referee, Michael Oliver, should have called play to a halt for the head injury that Alexis McAllister had suffered. But perhaps, given that it had been a clash between Virgil van Dijk and Alexis McAllister, maybe he was hesitant. But also, you might remember that there was a third player in the mix, and that was Brian Mbeumo. Whether he saw it clearly enough to know that it was Virgil van Dijk that clashed with Alexis McAllister, or otherwise, that can only be in his mind to tell, or line of sight. But I'm sure he did see that incident. Now, of course, when that ball is headed back, I think it's won by Bruno Fernandes. So you can see Virgil van Dijk has been attracted so further in. The ball is headed back to Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes has possession, quickly plays it to the wing back, one of the wing backs, and that's Amadou Diallo, who then makes it a run. Now, at that time, Ibrahim Konate is 27 yards away from the 16 yards box. I think Virgil van Dijk was about 31 yards away, and then was about 30 yards away. And then you had Brani Bomo at about 31 yards. Now, the movement for recovery for the two centre backs of Liverpool was a bit slow and almost condemnable, because ideally it should be Virgil van Dijk in that spot, running back in that area to mark. But also, you do question that where was Milos Kakes? Where is he in that sort of frame? Then Amadou Diallo runs with the ball, of course, makes the pass to a speeding Brani Bomo. Brani Bomo has quite the pace, who is entering the box and takes a touch and bang, puts that ball into the back of the net. And you could see that the player that had a shorter distance to cover in Ibrahim Konate was the one that tried to get back fast enough to try and put in a block, but he was never successful. Then Virgil van Dijk, and this is something I mentioned before during the course of this season, or prior to the start of this season, and it's something that I also touched upon in our interview with Aldrin Subuga Senior when we were discussing about Liverpool, that I feel that Virgil van Dijk is a pace, given that he's aging, his pace is going to continue to reduce, and that particular incident was evidence of that. But so that was the nature in how Manchester United, tried to play. Again, when you see that there's another opportunity that falls to Bruno Fernandes before he blasts it, to kiss the outside of the post and going out. So that's how they look to play. They look to isolate. Liverpool's Ryan Gravenberch, because then you had Szoboszlai and McAllister pushing further forward, but then Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate in some phases were not pushing high up enough. So at the end of the day, you had Ryan Gravenberch sort of in isolation in that midfield, and yet Manchester United were playing quite so narrow with that cohort of 5 players, whether it's an octagon or is it an octagon or hexagon, whichever it is, the one with 5 sides, because you had Bruno Fernandes, Casemiro, Cunha, Mbeumo, Mount in that sort of mix. So I do understand what Martin O'Neill is saying, that it's never the role of the opposing team or the opponent to make the game easier for you, And when you draw similar comparisons to Arsene Wenger, I mean, we've had that before, because because of the way that Arsenal are accustomed to playing their football. We also remember there's a game between West Ham United and Chelsea. I think that possibly ended in a goalless draw. And I remember Jose Mourinho making a comment at the time when West Ham were under the charges of some other guys. And Jose Mourinho's criticism for that game was that Sam Allardyce deployed tactics or played a game of 1994. That's how ancient he had chosen to go. So, but at the end of the day, it's the results that matter. It's the results that count. And unfortunately for Liverpool on Sunday, they did not get the results. And also, apart from that, is you have apart from that is that you have you ought to find a way. You ought to find a way, you know, to sort of break whatever you consider to be a defensive block. Arsenal faced those multiple times, like any other big team, like I've said. Again, also, Liverpool have been found out in such a way that when you play them in that fashion, you're going to get a result. Newcastle almost got a result. Crystal Palace got a result off of them, you know. So we can only congratulate Ruben Amorim for deploying the right tactics to going on and to outsmart or outwit Arne Slot and Liverpool entirely to get that result. And then you look at that ball that for which Harry Maguire heads home from Bruno Fernandes. Again, Bruno Fernandes is very targeted in his cross to try and find whoever is at the back post. I think it was it Luke Shaw and Harry Maguire in that sort of setup, but it's Harry Maguire that jumps the highest. Okay, where's Liverpool's back four? Because in a set piece, when you defend the first ball, you must keep your sights out for the second ball. Because once you defend the first ball and you know you're not in possession of the ball, then be rest assured that ball is going to be floated back in. And basically that's what's happened. You know, the first ball is headed back. Brandon Mbeumo tries to have an attempt on goal. The ball is sort of deflected or blocked and then falls back to, you know, Man United player before Bruno Fernandes brings in the cross and they get the goal. That's where they got their winning goal. But like I said, of course, obviously, Liverpool had played really, really well, but they were not clinical. On the other side, had they been clinical, the story would have been different. Cody Gakpo would have scored a hat-trick. Mo Salah would have scored. In fact, there's that. You remember that attempt by Cody Gakpo, the header that he heads wide. You literally had a Liverpool player celebrating because they literally knew that was going in point blank, and yet it just did not. You know, so they were without luck, but that's it. So Martin O'Neill, very, very renowned figure, was a manager for Aston Villa between 2006 and 2010. That was after having had about a 5-year stint with Celtic, and then he had one with Leicester City, of course Norwich City. He had a stint with them, Wycombe Wanderers. Then after Aston Villa, he joined Sunderland, where he was for about 2 years before joining the Republic of Ireland national team, which he managed for a period of about 5 years. So that's the manager we are talking about. He was speaking on TalkSport when he made those comparisons, when he drew those comparisons between Arsene Charles Wenger and Arne Slot in his assessment of what the game had been between the two, rivals of English football. So yeah, that's it. Anyways, let's move away quickly to the Emirates Stadium, where Atletico Madrid have complained, not just online, but also, or in the media, but have also complained to UEFA about the lack of hot water at the stadium, at Arsenal Stadium. I mean, forgive me, guys. This is a difference of culture. This is a difference of environment, perhaps. But the lack of hot water is never an issue in my world. I mean, you cannot refuse to shower because there's no hot water, whether come rain or sunshine. But yeah, I understand. I understand that in the advanced world, hot water is a thing. But also, I've seen it multiple times in movies or series where somebody complains, "Oh, they finished the hot water." Come on, a cold bath is every now and then is good for your soul. Go take it. No excuses whatsoever. So, Charles Watts did confirm that Atletico were unhappy over the changing rooms at the Emirates Stadium. We are unhappy over the changing rooms at the Emirates not having hot water tonight. The issue was reported to club staff during Atletico's evening training session. Atletico were due to finish their training session at 7:30 p.m. and the hot water issue was sorted by then. But Atletico finished their session early and had already left the stadium by that point to go back to their hotel for showers. There has been an apology for the inconvenience. Guys, I mean, this is just petty. To me, this is just petty. For all the things other teams have done or dark arts that people do to gain the advantage. For example, you've heard of incidents where fans of a home team discover the hotel where their next day's opponents are sleeping, and they go and blaze fireworks at midnight. In other words, to deny them the ample rest, and they go and maybe blast music and things like that. So in premises beyond the jurisdiction of the hotel itself, in terms of what they can control, that's all to gain advantage. Make sure your opponents relax less. I seem to remember a conversation by our very own Ugandan in Mike Mutiaba when he spoke about them going away for international duty or in terms of football. And what teams would do is that, of course, they would be the hosting team would be sort of in charge of their hotel, and they will put for them all sorts of food, like all sorts of food, an actual buffet. Too much food, too much drinks, some beers, some energy drinks, and things like that. Now, people who play football know that prior to a match, you're not supposed to overeat. There are certain foods you should be eating, so that you have the energy to run the entire 90 minutes. Surprisingly, people were eating that food like gluttons. They were eating like there's no tomorrow. And eventually, the tactic worked. It was costing them games. That's according to Mike Mutiaba. So I know that arts does exist in football here and there. But for all the tricks that I can think of that an opposing team can pull really on a given day, for me, hot water does not qualify to be part of it. Like I said, I understand the circumstances that in the developed world, hot water is a thing. But also, are we in winter? Not yet. It may be cold. I was seeing a friend of ours, that's a Kasuku Kuku was Zabanga, when he landed in Brussels, Belgium, and he was saying it's cold. It's cold. And I'm like, okay, is it the same thing in the UK? I know that in UK, sometimes it rains just to prove a point that it can rain, that it's capable of rain. But when rain comes sunshine, it's hot water for me shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't. So they shouldn't be mourning over that. None whatsoever. For all the things that teams have gone through as opponents visiting certain clubs, that the lack of hot water should be the least of anybody's worries. should be the least of anybody's worries. So yeah, that's the bit from Atletico de Madrid. But speaking of the game, we did speak about that game last night. That is set to take place tonight at 10 p.m. Between Arsenal and Atletico de Madrid. They will be meeting for the third time in a UEFA competition. Excuse me. Having met back in 2018 at the semi-finals of the UEFA Europa League, and over two legs, Arsenal got and over a course of two legs, Atletico Madrid got the better of Arsenal on a 2-1 aggregate, having won the reverse fixture by goal to nil at the Wanda Metropolitano, was it already? And then the first fixture having ended in a 1-1 draw. That was in 2018, in Arsene Wenger's last season. So, but ever since then, a lot has changed for both sides in terms of, playing staff. Atletico de Madrid still have some of those players that were available back then, in Antoine Griezmann, in Jan Oblak, in Koke. For Arsenal, none is there. The manager has since been swapped out twice. You had Unai Emery come in and leave, and then you had an interim Freddie Ljungberg before Mikel Arteta walks in, and it's been Mikel Arteta since 2019, while it's been Diego Simeone since what, 2012, So, anyways, like I said on paper, it's going to be a very, very difficult game. It's going to be a very, very difficult game because the teams that are meeting are that good in terms of not just playing style, but also in their conviction about how they want to play. You have a defensively solid Arsenal who are well drilled and well structured in every aspect of the game: set piece play, counter press, transitions that they are working to improve on, that defensive solidity, and everything in that line. Atletico Madrid, on the other hand, have had to go into their new team in a way, given the number of signings that they managed to bring in during the course of the summer. At the start of the season, they were making too many draws, but like I did say yesterday, that victory against Real Madrid in the Madrid derby, winning it 5-2, has given them loads and loads of confidence coming into this fixture. Over the weekend, Atletico de Madrid won their game against Osasuna by goal to nil. When you rewind things further back, they had shared the spoils with Celta Vigo in a 1-1 draw. Then you go back to their last Champions League outing. They beat up against Eintracht Frankfurt by 5-1. That was after they had just beaten up against Real Madrid by 5-2. Then you wind things further back, you find a 3-2 victory against Rayo Vallecano and a 1-0 draw against Rayo Mallorca. Then you wind things further back, you'll find a 3-2 loss to Liverpool, and then a 2-0 victory against Villarreal. Then a draw, there's a draw against Aves, a draw against Elche. And then a loss to Espanyol on the opening weekend of the Spanish La Liga. But my point is, when you look at that trend or that trajectory of results, is that Atletico de Madrid have only kept one clean sheet in all their opening in their opening 11-12 games of the season. They've only kept one clean sheet, and that was against Villarreal who they beat by 2-0. Ever since then, they are a team. They have kept two clean sheets against Osasuna over the weekend and against Villarreal. So only two clean sheets. That tells you that they are a team very, very capable of conceding goals. They do concede a good number of goals, and so if you're Arsenal, you're thinking when you attack them in the right way, then you can't bang in the goals. You just have to be clinical enough. We saw that against Liverpool. Liverpool put 3 past them, including a set piece play goal that turned out to be the match winner when Virgil van Dijk headed home and very late on in the game. So there will be Atletico de Madrid will have to be worried of that because Arsenal are equally very good when it comes to set piece play. In terms of Benjamin, Atletico Madrid will have their eye on Bukayo Saka. I do not know who is going to be played alongside, but I'm suspicious that Mikel Arteta, given the responsibilities that they do have over the weekend when they entertain Crystal Palace at the same staff, may be inclined to make a change or two in his starting 11 compared to what started over the weekend against Fulham. However, if you were not to change anything, I still wouldn't be surprised because he is that kind of manager, very, very stubborn, Mikel Arteta. On the side of Atletico de Madrid, Arsenal will have to be wary of Julian Alvarez. I mean, boy, oh boy, doesn't he love to score in big games? Doesn't he love to disprove teams that he is indeed in for the money? That you can bet your money on him. When it comes to set piece play, he scored a couple of free kicks this season already. He's very athletic. He can dribble past people. He can take a shot from distance. He can bend the ball. I mean, he just ticks all boxes. He just ticks all boxes. So that's the player that we are talking about when it comes to Atletico de Madrid. Also, Alexander Soloth, very, very good in the air. Arsenal will have to worry about him. Alex Baina, very, very creative, attacking midfielder slash right winger, who they did sign from Villarreal. So, yeah, that's that. My prediction, like I said, is a 1-1 draw. I wouldn't be surprised if it ended in a 2-1 draw. But yesterday I did burn my fingers in the prediction, for which I had given a 2-1 victory for West Ham against Brentford. And Brentford ended up beating them by 2-0 last night with Igor Thiago being one of the goal scorers in that one. Excuse me. So yeah, do let me know what your thoughts are, what are your predictions are for that particular game. But in the early kickoff today in the UEFA Champions League at 7:45 p.m., we'll have 2 games. Barcelona at home against Olympiacos, while Kairat Almaty will be up against Pafos. Then at 10 p.m., Newcastle welcome Benfica. PSG will be at home against Napoli. PSV will be at home against Napoli, while PSG will be away to Bayer Leverkusen. Inter will play away to Union St. Gilloise. Copenhagen will be at home against Dortmund. Villarreal will take on Manchester City, while Arsenal have Atletico de Madrid, and then all the other fixtures will subsequently be coming on Wednesday. Like I told you, there will be games on Wednesday, there will be games on Thursday in the UEFA Conference League and the UEFA Europa League, so do not miss out on all that action from the UEFA competitions. Like I said last night, you did have a game played in the Premier League that was between West Ham against Brentford on Monday Night Football. But again, West Ham were poor, really. They could only manage a 43% ball possession, conceding 57% to Brentford, who had as many as 10 shots off target. They had 7 shots on target compared to West Ham's 1. So you can see really that West Ham were indeed very, very poor on the day. So Brentford dominated most of the affairs of that game. And yeah, they took all 3 points with Igor Thiago scoring. He thought he had scored a brace, but one of his goals was ruled out as offside by the video assistant referee. And then Janssen was the other goal scorer very late on in the game, in the 4th minute of added time, to guarantee that Brentford walked away with all 3 points, which is very, very significant to them on the Premier League road, because it takes them from 16th place to as high as 13th place with 10 points ahead of Newcastle and behind teams like Everton and Aston Villa, Brighton, who all have 12, and 11 points respectively. Everton 11 points, Brighton and Aston Villa at 12 points. So very, very beautiful result there. I recorded for Brentford. Keith Andrews was really, really delighted with the results. Anyways, guys, allow me to wrap it here and wish you a wonderful rest of the day. It's been a pleasure doing this with you. I hope you stay well during the course of the day. Do not forget to enjoy that UEFA Champions League action. We'll try to digest it more as it goes on. I think we'll have a watch along for the second half for Arsenal versus Atletico and more. Or if that is not possible, then we'll look to do the broadcast immediately after the end of the game. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure. Stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye for now.